A farmers coming to a luxury hotel is embarrassing, so stay away lol. On that day, the second-generation president of one of our client company, who didn't invite me to the social gathering, blurted out to me disrespectfully. The social gathering was hosted by the food wholesaler I was doing business with. While other clients were invited, for some reason, I was the only one not invited. When I asked why, the reason that came out of the second-generation president's mouth was the earlier line, which was terribly childish and absurd. Holding back my irritation inwardly, I stared at the second-generation president and pressed the question, "Why is being a farmer embarrassing? Don't you get it? It's because farmers have a backward and shabby image. Now, go on, get going, you'll dampen the mood of our company." The words of the second-generation president, filled with even clearer malice than before, caused something to snap inside me. Go, is that so? Including all the interactions through work up to now, I understood clearly. There was no point in trying to persuade this man, or even to seek a normal conversation with him. I left the place after giving the second-generation president, who was smirking at me in a mocking manner, one last glare. At the same time, I thought the second-generation president must have realized by now that by accepting the contract without receiving my signature, he had dug his own grave. My name is William. I am the manager of a large farm called Evans Sun Garden, owning several farms in the Northeast. I cultivate and sell luxury organic vegetables and fruits. This year, I've reached the respectable age of 52. But I still carry the consciousness of being active both as a manager and as a person. Our farm employs not only young people, but also the elderly and housewives, contributing to local employment. This tourist farm has been passed down from my great-grandfather. And it was the soil improvement revisited by my father's generation that led to a leap forward. The vegetables and fruits cultivated during my father's era, with their focus on organic and rare varieties, boasted such a taste that they were in high demand from luxury hotels and restaurants. Busy as it was, I took pride and happiness in knowing that the vegetables and fruits my family and I produced were being enjoyed and handled by everyone. However, these days of pride and happiness in our work were not to last long, because one of our clients turned out to be more troublesome than I had thought. Some time ago, the president of a well-known food wholesaler in New York took notice of Evans Sun Garden and approached us for a deal. The president owned the food wholesale company, Stevens Food Holdings. He fell in love with my vegetables after tasting them in a dish served at his favorite restaurant. Moreover, after asking about suppliers and learning about Evans Sun Garden from the restaurant's chef, the president came to us day after day, wanting to sell our vegetables and fruits. To top it off, he even said he wanted to help with the harvest, just to see and touch the fresh vegetables that had moved him. While I was genuinely happy about his passion for my vegetables, remembering past issues where the freshness of the vegetables deteriorated through the wholesaler, I initially kept refusing. However, worn down by his persistent enthusiasm, I decided to engage in business with Stevens Food Holdings. Since the start of our dealings, the president handled my vegetables with care and sincerity. Seeing his heartfelt enthusiasm, I felt confident entrusting my vegetables to him and continued the partnership without hesitation. Decades of doing business with Stevens Food Holdings went by, and as the presidency changed, dark clouds began to loom. The president who had adored my vegetables, unable to overcome old age, passed a position to his son, Oliver. When I was informed about this change over the phone by the president himself, I was surprised, but he hesitantly said, "My son seems motivated, and with recommendations from those around him, including my wife. I chose him as my successor as president, but he has a rough side too. I made sure to tell him to be respectful and not cause any trouble, but please don't hesitate to consult me if anything happens." Okay. Upon hearing these words from the former president, I felt anxious again. A few days later, his son, Oliver, took over as his father's successor, or rather, as the second-generation president. Hello, I'm Oliver, the new president of Stevens Food Holdings, taking over from my dad. Looking forward to working with you. When Oliver first visited some garden, he was dressed in a suit, giving off a capable aura. But his frivolous greeting made me dislike him. His hair was dyed, and he wore earrings, with a flashy shirt and tie. And despite being a company dealing with food, he reeked of men's cologne. I was taught by my father that perfume is forbidden for those handling ingredients, as it can affect the freshness depending on the food, but it seems that Oliver didn't listen properly. Feeling even more anxious about this, I decided to see how things would go, and returned the greeting. I'm William, the manager of Evans Sun Garden. I look forward to working with you in place of your father. Yeah, got it. Same here, looking forward to it. Oliver responded to the greeting and handshake with a casual attitude. His demeanor only made me feel more anxious, and then Oliver did something outrageous. We were about to go through the contract renewal process, but Oliver hardly looked at me and responded to my words, including explanations, with dismissive replies like yeah, and sure. Moreover, despite having explained these matters properly, he made a visibly displeased face and said this. I've heard a lot about your place from my dad, but don't you think the prices for your ingredients are a bit too high? This is probably several times more expensive than ingredients imported from abroad. Can't you consider our situation a bit more, including the expenses? Furthermore, Oliver, looking bored, carelessly threw the contract documents, scattering them across the desk. As I was left speechless by this, Oliver told me something outrageous. Just so you know, I'm not as nice as my dad. I'll say what I want, and will make I get my way. So don't expect the kind treatment you got from my dad before. This left me even more speechless, and made me realize that Oliver had no respect for the industry at all. Since then, a series of unsettling incidents occurred between Evans Sun Garden and Stevens Food Holdings, even though we had been in a good relationship during the previous president's era. One day, a dedicated driver transporting designated vegetables and fruits by truck was denied entry to Stevens Food Holdings, due to a young guard near the vehicle entrance delaying him repeatedly for no good reason, saying, "He didn't greet me." There were also instances of harassment where another dedicated driver, who arrived before the designated time, was told by the guard to take the goods back home because you didn't register in time for today. Upon learning this, I immediately called Oliver, but he responded with a displeased and weary voice, spouting unreasonable complaints. The driver from your place must have acted defiantly, that's why the goods didn't arrive. What kind of training are you giving your drivers and employees? Don't they have any morals? Stunned by his unreasonable comments, I protested, but Oliver dismissed me and abruptly hung up the phone. Another day, one of our farm's sales employees was suddenly ordered by Oliver over the phone to make a deal with a short deadline. Without a word to me, the responsible manager, Oliver one-sidedly made an unreasonable request, confusing the employee, who responded that he would report back to me and asked Oliver to wait. Then Oliver suddenly shouted at the employee in a rough tone and loudly, "Don't mess with me. Are you guys incapable of doing anything without orders from that old manager? As the president of the client company, I'm telling you to go all out." Shocked by Oliver's sudden intimidating outburst, the employee was left speechless, and Oliver slammed the phone down. And Oliver didn't stop there. He sent harshly worded calls and emails to other sales department employees. He threatened to stop dealings, and made demanding calls to the sales department every 30 minutes. After receiving requests from the mentally exhausted sales department, I once again called Oliver. But he didn't take me seriously and hung up abruptly. The series of disrespectful incidents towards the precious vegetables of Sun Garden made things truly intolerable, as this was a matter concerning the honor of Sun Garden. One day I went to Stevens Food Holdings myself and directly protested to Oliver. However, Oliver listened to my straightforward lecture with an annoyed look and finally scoffed. "Look, my company isn't running on charity. You're a farmer, so you might not get it, but running a business isn't easy. The more unnecessary expenses pile up, the less profit we make. So I can't be dealing with every farmer's level of satisfaction. LOL, argument over. Oliver, enough. If you don't like it, too bad. LOL, we can always end the contract. Then I'll just find a better farm to deal with and sign a new contract with them. Ignoring my anger, Oliver laughed it off and quickly left the reception room, ending the conversation as if it were nothing. This only fueled my anger further, and realizing that this situation was going nowhere, I immediately fought to call the former president to discuss what to do. But before that could happen, Oliver made a decisive move to harass me further. One day, while working as usual at Sun Garden, one of our sales employees suddenly asked me, manager, there was a recent social gathering held by Stevens Food Holdings at a luxury hotel in New York. Weren't you invited? Did you have some other engagement? What? Wait, what are you talking about? I was taken aback by this sudden news. It turned out that a social gathering had indeed been held recently at a luxury hotel in New York, hosted by Stevens Food Holdings, and all their other clients had been invited. This event was an annual tradition, and Sun Garden had always attended. However, this year, for some reason, we were the only ones not invited. It seems that other clients were also wondering why we, with our long-standing supply relationship, hadn't attended. At that time, I hadn't even been aware that such an event was happening, and frankly, I hadn't wanted to force my attendance. However, curious about the reason, I decided to ask Oliver about it. I had to visit Stevens Food Holdings for the next contract renewal process, so I asked him then. President Oliver, I heard there was a social gathering at a luxury hotel in New York recently that invited all clients except us. When I asked him, Oliver casually responded, "Oh, what about it?" What do you mean, what about it? The gathering was at one of our clients' luxury hotels. We didn't invite you because, you know, the farmer at a luxury hotel is just embarrassing. LOL. What a prejudiced and selfish reason. Trying to keep my irritation in check, I pressed Oliver for an answer. Why is being a farmer considered embarrassing? Don't you get it? Farmers just have this backward and shabby image. Now, go on, get going. You'll just bring down the mood of our company. Oliver's words, filled with even clearer malice than before, made me feel something snap inside me. Oh, is that so? Including all the interactions through work up to now, I understood clearly. There was no point in trying to persuade this man, or in seeking a normal conversation with him. With that, I gave Oliver one last glare, smirking at me mockingly, before leaving the place. And at the same time, I wondered if Oliver had realized I had accepted the contract in this meeting but left it unsigned on the table as a return. This meant that we, Sun Garden, had not renewed the contract to continue doing business. On the next scheduled delivery day, since the contract had not been renewed, I naturally did not prepare any ingredients for Stevens Food Holdings. Instead, I decided to distribute what would have been for Stevens Food Holdings to other food wholesalers, hotels, and restaurants in larger quantities. I felt bad for those who had been purchasing from us in Oliver's father's era. But I explained the situation to those who contacted us directly. We arranged to directly contract and supply them, and they understood our situation and were happy to continue trading with us. If they understand the value of our ingredients and, more importantly, did not let personal reasons or emotions interfere with business, then they are more than suitable as new trading partners. Our employees, who have been worn out by Oliver's tyranny, can now work more peacefully, both mentally and physically. A few days into working under this new arrangement, Oliver finally seemed to notice the situation and called. "Hey, what are you doing? How long are you planning to keep us waiting?" "I'm sorry, what do you mean by waiting?" "Don't play dumb. None of the ingredients we ordered from your company have arrived." "What are you doing? Bring them to our company immediately." Oliver's words were as brash and arrogant as ever, but I calmly responded, Unfortunately, we have declined this contract. By the way, did you check the contract I handed over the other day? The contract, what about it? In that recent contract, you should have noticed that I did not sign to continue the agreement. What? Don't mess with me, man. Ignoring the president of a client company and ending the contract. What are you thinking? Right now, my company is swamped with complaints from clients about not receiving their ingredients. Get it together and bring them over now. This is an order from the president of your client's company. From the other end of the phone, I could hear Oliver's irate yelling. But his angry shouts and frets no longer affected me. Have you forgotten, President Oliver? No, Oliver. You said yourself that you wouldn't mind ending the contract at any time if you were unhappy. That's why I didn't sign. Did you forget what you said? What? I don't care about that. We're talking about my company not receiving ingredients right now. Well, regardless, the contract has not been renewed. It's as simple as not being delivered because it's not contracted. Moreover, your tyrannical behavior has physically and mentally exhausted several of our employees. So we have no intention of continuing any contracts with your company in the future, so please understand. With that, I hung up the phone without further ado. Immediately after, my cell phone rang again, but seeing it was from Stevens Food Holdings, I blocked a call and ignored it. The calls also came to Sun Garden's landline, but seeing the same number. I instructed my employees to block it as well, and to ignore it thoroughly. Then, I remembered the former president I had been putting off consulting since the incident with the social gathering. The former president was sensible, but I was concerned that his son Oliver might have misled him with false cuds. So I apologized and explained the situation so far. The former president was shocked upon hearing the story. He sighed in disappointment over his son's tyrannical behavior, saying, "So it has come to this." He then apologized for his son's misconduct and promised over the phone to take appropriate measures immediately. The next day after that call from the former president, Oliver showed up at Evan's Sun Garden for the first time in a while. "Hey, I came here personally for the delivery, so open the gate. If my dad finds out we can't work because we're out of ingredients, it'll be trouble. If that happens, my position as president, which I finally got, is at risk. So since I've come all this way, either open the gate or get it ready or do something." Oliver was crying out arrogantly outside the closed main gate. But I decided to ignore him and instructed the employees not to engage with him. After being excluded and insulted on the day of the social gathering invitation, I had decided not to deal with Oliver anymore, knowing that persuasion and even conversation were futile. So, Oliver's situation was no longer my concern. Acting as if we didn't even see him, Oliver seemed to think he could just enter, attempting to climb the gate. Just as I decided it was time to stop him, a car appeared in front of the main gate, stopping with a screech. As Oliver turned around, several men and women in suits emerged from the car, approaching him as he tried to climb over the gate. "We've been looking for you, Oliver. Your father is calling for you. Please come back to the company with us immediately." "What are you doing? Let go of me. I came here to talk to the manager. If we don't continue our dealings, it's going to be trouble for your company as well, you know that. No, first, you must come back with us, and with all due respect, please remember that you and your mother are the ones who created this situation." Despite Oliver's resistance, the men and women in suits forcefully detained him and pushed him into the car. As I opened the window inadvertently, one of the women in suits apologized for the disturbance with a bow before getting into the car and leaving. From the snippets of conversation I could barely hear from across the gate, I was convinced that the former president had swiftly taken action. Some time after Oliver was taken away, my cell phone was bombarded with calls from an unknown number. Feeling something about this relentless calling, I decided to answer the unknown call. "Hey, was that my dad's errand you pulled earlier? Snitching to my dad, that's low." The voice that came through the phone, sounding almost in tears, was indeed Oliver's. According to him, his father, the former president, had sternly told him over the phone to wait at the company because there was something urgent to discuss. Oliver thought the social gathering incident, among other current company situations, had been exposed to his father. Fearing that if he went to his father now, he wouldn't just be forced to resign as president. He might also be kicked out of the family home. Immediately after, he tried to escape from the company and came to Sungarden on foot, hoping to earn forgiveness by resuming the deal with us, but our decision to ignore him led to his failure. Then, he was brought to the company where the former president was waiting. But in a last-ditch effort to escape, he locked himself in the bathroom and contacted me from the company's mobile phone. "Because you snitched to my dad, I'm about to be made to resign as president, and he's even talking about kicking me and my mom out." My dad was furious over the phone, and I know for sure he'd do it if he's angry. That's what you call reaping what you sow, Oliver. If you hadn't taken your position as president for granted and had listened to your father's advice, working hard to lead the company properly, none of this would have happened. I thought I'd give him some advice as a fellow business owner, but Oliver was too lost in panic and anger. He ignored my words and continued with his insults and haughty demands. Realizing once again that talking to this man was futile, I decided to say this last piece. "Anyway, our association ends here. I have a duty to protect my farm and the employees who work there. You should receive your scolding from your father and learn what you should do next. Goodbye." Just as I was about to hang up, I heard the sound of a door being forced open, and Oliver's scream. It seemed he was secured by the men and women in suits, the envoys of the former president. Later, when I spoke with the former president, it turned out Oliver had become his successor due to his mother's, the former president's wife's, forceful networking. The former president had someone in mind for succession, but his wife, doting on Oliver, had won over many top executives with favors and money to make Oliver the next president. Armed with these allies, and exploiting the fact that Oliver had abilities despite his problematic character, she practically made him the next company president herself. Upon learning about the continuous disturbing incidents at the company, including harassment towards Sungarden, the former president initiated an internal investigation through a consulting lawyer. The investigation uncovered the facts about Oliver's misuse of presidential authority, as well as his mother's strong arming to get him installed as president. After hearing about the social gathering incident from me, the former president realized he had been too lenient with his son. Being swayed by the moment and his wife's wishes, he decided to divorce his wife, disown his son, and relieve him from the presidency. He used his subordinates to bring his son back, who, along with his mother, are said to have been severely reprimanded and punished. It's baffling how such a solid former president ended up with such a family. But it might just be that he lacked judgment in personal matters. Following an emergency shareholders meeting convened by the former president, Oliver was removed as president, expelled from the company, and disowned from the family home. Furthermore, as the source of the company's scandals, including the issues with Sungarden, the former president's wife was divorced, kicked out of the house, and burdened with a huge debt for damages and compensation to the company. Currently, Oliver and his mother have moved to a run-down apartment in New York, working multiple part-time jobs from dawn till dusk, struggling to pay off their debt and living expenses. Those in the sales department who had supported Oliver and his mother were also dismissed for disciplinary reasons. And the female executive whom the former president had intended as his successor became the new president. Under the full effort of this new president, Stevens Food Holdings was saved from bankruptcy and is gradually recovering. As for me, I continue to run Evans' Sungarden and other farms successfully, cherishing my vegetables, fruits, family, and friends. Regarding Stevens Food Holdings, the former president offered a new apology, and we were invited to the next year's social gathering, where we renewed our contract, deepening our relationship with the new female president. This incident taught me that without proper judgment in both business and personal life, one could encounter unimaginable troubles. With that lesson in mind, I vow to be careful not to end up with people like Oliver and his mother when it comes time to choose my successor.